Traveling to Consciousness, exploring spiritual journeys to find answers in uncertainty.
What is up, conscious monkeys? Welcome back to another episode of Traveling to Consciousness. As always, I'm your host, Clayton Q. Terry, and in today's podcast episode, got a lot of juice for you. First of all, I want to start it off by saying that I got a nice hefty new job that I'm going to be starting tomorrow. Well, I guess this releases on Monday, so technically today. So it's very exciting. It's a little bit of a catch up with Clayton. I know we haven't had those in a while. Things have just been crazy. I've been trying to focus on politics. So a little mini catch up with Clayton we'll start this off with, which is got a new job. Very, very fortunate, very high paying. It's going to start off remote. Then I'll be moving down to Charleston, South Carolina. So if you live in the Charleston area, hit me up. Show me around. Let's see what's going on. I'll probably be moving down there in 2 months-ish. Going to take my studio with me. Going to actually need to get a whole room just for my studio, but I'm excited. It's a very, very powerful job with the government. It's a government contractor. Going to be working on software, going to be leading a team, all this fun stuff. So don't want to get too much into that, but I wanted to at least give you guys a little update, a little life update, because, I feel like it's good knowledge. It's confirming that I'm on the right path, that more opportunities are coming and more energy is coming. Because, as we talk about the whole spiritual war, and we need to become powerful, spiritual people need to be powerful. We need to be powerful politically. We need to be powerful spiritually, and we need to be powerful monetarily. And I see this job as being a great step in the direction of becoming powerful monetarily and politically. So I wanted to just share that with you guys because we talk about that so much. And it's very validating confirming. It's confirmation. It kind of was already validated, but it's confirming. It's validating that these techniques, that this education, the indigo education I'm sharing with you guys is real, is legit. Because there has always been a little bit of piece of me that's like, is this the right thing? Is this the wrong thing? So if you've watched those or listened to those indigo education pieces, just know that those are some of the very base level things that I have been utilizing, that I've been understanding, that I have been engaging with, I've been testing in my little playground of life. And in the last year, the energies have dramatically changed in my life for the better. And I see this higher paying job, very high paying, very solid 6-figure job as being confirmation that these work. And it's encouraging me to share more of the things behind the scenes, because some of these ideas, some of these indigo education ideas are very crazy. They're very out of the box. They're very unique. So I just want to put that out there, that things are going well in those regards. So with all that being said, this little mini catch up with Clayton episode is now over. And we're going to jump into normally what we talk about here, which on Mondays, which is the politics, spiritual politics, if you will. We're going to talk about what's been going on in the news, my opinions on them, and understanding what it means. So the very first thing, let's jump into number one. And I think this is an exciting thing. I really think that this is a positive thing for the nation. I think this is a positive thing for everybody. DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk, is considering, so they haven't said it yet, but they're considering to sending all U.S. taxpayers a $5,000 check from the savings that DOGE found. Now, I think this is a great idea. I think this is fantastic. I mean, they're wasting our money. You have a billionaire go in there and say, okay, we're not going to waste their money anymore. Let's give it back to them. And I think that's great. I truly do. I think that, I don't know all the numbers, right? Because I'm sure they're still trying to find them. But I think that's honestly amazing. And maybe it's like a 50-50 thing, because if they're truly going after all the waste, fraud, and abuse, I'm sure they're going to be able to uncover trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And some of it will even be hidden in the money. What do I mean by that? There's a classic kind of example that like one bolt can cost like $50 for the government. And it's because they kind of like hide those wastes and numbers in that, in the product itself, because it's not technically that much money. Well, it doesn't cost that. If it was competitive, it would not cost that much money. So starting off, I think that it's good that this is a part of the agenda of giving the money back to the people. I'm all on board with that. I think that we do need to find a balance in how much we give back to the taxpayers. And maybe it's like a 70-30 split of 70% goes to taxpayers, 30% goes to our deficit. Because I've told you before, if we don't start addressing that deficit, there's going to be a financial collapse coming. And who knows, we might start seeing that outcome. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I felt like that was news I saw today that I really enjoyed. I thought was good. I thought that was, I think that it should be a bipartisan, of people sitting here saying like, yeah, like we should give taxpayer dollars, the taxpayers their money back. $5,000, like that's going to go a long way for a lot of people. Many people don't make that much money in a month. And so that would be huge. And I think that's really good. I want to sit here and applaud that, because I know that I've been very critical at times of the Trump administration, of Elon. And so I think that I need to definitely find times to applaud them whenever I do see things that are going well. And another thing that I guess I see this as being a good thing, generally speaking, and I think it's difficult from my point to affirmatively say that this is good, just because I don't have all the information, and I don't know if you have all the information unless you're in a position of power and authority. But one of the headlines is that the Trump administration is putting thousands of USAID staffers on leave and removing their jobs. Now, there's a lot bundled into this, but in short, and I'm reading from the Associated Press now, the Trump administration said Sunday that it was placing all but a fraction of staffers at the U.S. Agency for International Development on leave worldwide and eliminating at least 1,600 U.S.-based jobs. The move was the latest and one of the biggest steps yet towards what President Donald Trump and cost-cutting ally Elon Musk say is their goal of gutting the 6-decade-old aid and development agency in a broader campaign to slash the size of the federal government. And I am very much on the side of slashing the size of the federal government, because we know, the people know, the private sector knows the best way to handle money. It's not the government. So what I find interesting about all this, and I think something that's been poking me recently, is the private sector versus the public sector. So if you're unaware, the public sector would be like government jobs. The private sector would be individual businesses. You can think like Facebook, Google, private sector. Mom and pop shops, private sector. Public would be like USAID, any federal agencies. And some of the numbers that I saw coming out of the Biden administration is that they would sit out there and say, okay, we created 500,000 jobs last month. Oh, the economy's doing so well. We created 500,000 jobs. You dig into the numbers, and the public sector, so the government jobs, would increase by 750,000. But then in the private sector, they would lose 250,000 jobs. So they would create this illusion of the economy doing well by artificially inflating the numbers, or only showing you the numbers that they wanted you to see. And that's what I see happening here. Well, not happening here, but I find it relevant to discuss, because with the Trump administration cutting these jobs, they're going to create this illusion that they're cutting U.S. jobs, that this is bad for America, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, this can be good. This is going to help put more workers into the private sector so that they can bolster up our economy in a more healthy way. Because I've worked government jobs. I started another one. Luckily, this one that I'm going into is much smaller. But when you start becoming a huge government job, they start to lose their efficiency very quickly. So that's one thing that makes me very excited for this job I'm going into. But the reason that I bring this up is that you have to be careful about the language that they use whenever portraying this information. because they can be very, very tricky about it. I mean, that's what politics is all about, right? Being tricky. So I think the other big deal, the other big thing that's been tracked to USAID, and I know I've brought this up before, but to just reinforce it, that USAID was known for giving money to terrorist organizations, known for doing it. They were proven in doing it. And I think for every one that gets proven, there's probably 10 more hidden under the rug. And I believe I've talked about this in past political episodes, but that's just wrong. That's exactly what causes all of these wars that we see, is that the United States government funds both sides of the war. They secretly, covertly fund the terrorist organizations, and then publicly, Congress will send money to whoever our foreign allies are, Israel, Ukraine. Ukraine, Russia is a little different, but specifically in Israel, right? Because they're fighting Hamas, a terrorist organization who is getting funded by, whether it's the CIA, maybe it's Mossad could be funding them too. And we have to stop that. We have to cut the funding to these terrorist organizations. We have to stop leaving billions of dollars worth of military equipment for terrorism and for terrorist organizations to get their hands on. And so I see that as being a huge step in the right direction if we can stop funding those terrorist organizations. And I think it's great that they found that within USAID, but that's only one of them. I can promise you, I can guarantee you, without even looking at it, without even having all the information in front of me, I can guarantee you that it exists within other departments as well. And we'll wait. I think that's something that will come out more in time as more information, if DOGE keeps doing what it's doing, if the Department of Government Efficiency keeps doing what it's doing, investigating everything, investigating the IRS, investigating the CIA, the FBI, investigating everywhere that we are sending money, more of that will come out. But let's see. Let's see how much they investigate, how much they release. And speaking of wars, speaking of Ukraine, another very fascinating event that I saw that occurred was that Zelensky, he offered his resignation in exchange for NATO membership, which is just mind-blowing to me. He basically came out and said, I'll resign if it means peace and or Ukraine becomes a member of NATO. Now, this is why that is so absurd and so insane and just comical on so many levels. So let's take a step back and go back to when, I wish I could remember the date, but it would have been whenever this war started, I think 2021 or 22. And at the time, Vice President Kamala Harris went over there and basically said to Ukraine, hey, we want you to join NATO. You guys should join NATO. It would be so great for us to expand NATO. Now, if we take a step back again, if you're not aware, NATO, the Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization, the whole goal of it was whenever the USSR was a thing, the Soviet Union, and the goal was to prevent communism from spreading across Europe. The premise, I think it was 16 initial nations who basically said, okay, we'll fund our government, we'll fund our military, 2% of our GDP. And then if there's an attack, if communism tries to infiltrate or attack one of us, then it's a fight on all of us. So then, flash forward, USSR gets dismantled, and then NATO expands to, I think, 31 or 32 countries after that, after the USSR came down. And every time there's been an expansion, Putin has said, stop expanding NATO or else we're going to go to war. And this has happened on 3 different occasions. So fast forward, and there's a lot more details in there. I'm kind of just giving you a high level overview. Fast forward to 3 years ago, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, Vice President Kamala Harris, who I'm sure has that knowledge. If I have that knowledge, she has that knowledge, decided to go to Ukraine, into Kiev, and say, hey, you guys should join NATO. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that just be great for the world if you joined NATO? 3 days later, Russia invaded Ukraine. 3 days later, Russia said, okay, we told you not to invade. We told you not to expand NATO. And now you're calling for them to join. Russia invades Ukraine. And then Zelensky pauses. He declares martial law, which pauses all elections. And to be a member of NATO, you have to be living in a democracy. So he basically shut down the elections. So no longer a democracy. And then what is it called? Whenever he basically destroyed all the news networks except for one. So they have one state-run news organization, which America kind of does, but it's like a little bit under a facade. At least they kind of give you at least two sides, which are both ignorant, or not. They're not ignorant, but they're just like, they lack the truth of what's happening in each situation, and they kind of gaslight you into pulling us apart as a nation. But that's a whole nother conversation. I made a podcast once upon a time about how the media will brainwash you and the media will manipulate you. So I highly recommend you check that out. I don't remember where it is. I wish I had the episode number off the top of my head, but if you just search it, you'll find it. Point being is now Ukraine is not a democracy anymore. So they can't join NATO because he paused the elections. He has now a state-run media organization, which is essentially another branch of the government. And so for him to sit there and say, you know what, I'll resign if we get that NATO agreement, is just laughable to me. Because it shows that either he's not serious about peace, or there's something else being contrived in the background. Because he would know that was the catalyst for that war starting. That was the spark that got those things in motion. And so I find it hilarious that he thinks that that's what's going to be the ticket to freedom and peace in that region. It's not going to happen. So it's hard for me. And here's where I think a lot of people get into the conspiracy rabbit hole, which is such a loaded term. It's so ironic anymore, but how can people get to that position of power and not know what they're doing? I mean, that's the question I always ask myself. And that's why I always feel like there's something that's not being said to the public. It comes back to our transparency issue. It comes back to the issue that they don't care about lying to your face. Is that he didn't become the quote unquote president. I think they call it president of Ukraine without knowing what he's doing. Like, you have to be intelligent at some level. So maybe he's making this barter of like, well, I'll resign, but we become member NATO. So it's kind of like this double-edged sword where it's like, well, that's not going to happen, so you're not going to resign kind of deal. It's like, well, I'm trying to do what's best, but like, I have this situation that I know is never going to occur. So then, then I'm never going to resign. I'm trying to play nice, but it's in this veil of illusion, or a veil of kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's like this illusion that he's trying to play nice, but he knows that you're not going to give. It's like, yeah, I'll be nice to you, but you give me $10 million first. It's like, well, I'm never going to give you $10 million. It's like, all right, fine. Well, I tried to be nice to you. I gave you an option, but like, that's your fault. And it's now your fault. It's like kind of like a weird gaslighting offer. I feel like there's a term out there for it, but I don't know it off the top of my head. And I think one of the other things that I saw, I wish I had the quote on me, but I saw Elon Musk, again, I want to give credit where credit's due whenever I see it. I saw Elon Musk talking about the war in Ukraine, and he said so many words that just connected and are a lot of the stuff that I have said on this podcast, which is those people that are dying in Kiev, both sides of the war, are our brothers and sisters, our fathers, our mothers. They're the ones who are dying and have been dying for the last several years. And to hear Elon Musk, just anyone in power, utter that sentiment, like, really struck me in my heart. It really encouraged me and gave me a lot of hopefulness for the wars, for the situations, for the people that are in power, even to see that they would think that way, that they would believe that way, that thought at least has entered his mind of, these are our brother and sisters too. It's not like they're Ukrainian, they're Russian. He at least has that that seed is at least there somewhere in his mind. And so I wish I saved that video, and I should find it somewhere. But I just remember hearing that and just being absolute music to my ears. Maybe I'll try to pull it up right now. Elon Musk, brothers and fathers in Ukraine dying. It was just within the last couple of days, and we'll see if we can find it pretty quick. Yeah, it's going to be kids are dying in the trenches. Oh, here, maybe this is it. Is this today? Yeah, this looks like it. So he was at APAC. It's kind of funny. He's like these big ass glasses on. It's honestly kind of funny. I'm going to turn up the volume a little here, see if we can get this whole clip. I haven't watched this yet, but I think this is it. Let's see.
I think we should have empathy for the people dying at the front lines. That's the most important thing. How many more years is this supposed to go on?
Yeah.
And imagine if that was your son, your father. What are they dying for?
Yeah.
What exactly are they dying for? That line the line of engagement has barely moved for 2 years.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of people dead in trenches for what? And I'll tell you what for what. It's like for the biggest graph machine that I've ever seen in my life. That's for what? It's unreal. Like the amount of money that is being taken in graft and bribery is disgusting. And so what's actually happening is that those people, those poor guys are getting sent into a meat grinder for money. That's what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And it needs to stop. They need to stop dying.
Yeah.
And the growth machine's got to stop. So and I think people that don't. A lot of people out there don't realize, like, the president has a lot of empathy. He really cares.
Yeah.
He's a good man.
So I know that sounded a little low on your guys' end, but hopefully you could hear that. To me, that entire minute, I was just struck. In listening back to it again, that is the mentality that we need our leaders to have when we're talking about war, is that this literally is all about money, and they're willing to sacrifice men and women. They're sacrificing people. Let's take gender out of it. Let's take sex out of it. They're literally trying to sacrifice humans for money, to have a money laundering business. And I find that to be the most inhuman thing in the entire world. And I love that Elon said this. I mean, obviously I don't agree with everything he does 100%, but as long as we can agree upon that, like, there's common ground between us as humans. And I'm getting a little emotional over here because that is something that I am so passionate about. And quite frankly, one of the biggest, if not the biggest reason I felt the need to get involved in politics is for that energy right there. To see that he sees it. He sees that it's money laundering, his graph machine, a meat grinder. I mean, the imagery, it's amazing. It's so genius. And so I love hearing him say that. I love him putting that out there. And I think we need more leaders to talk in that way. And hopefully, maybe in the future, one of the leaders out there is listening to this podcast and realize that that's the mentality we need to have whenever moving forward with this stuff. That's it right there. So on that emotional note, I'm going to leave you guys off on it. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And I will see you all in the 6th dimension.